The following training in the Triage Consultation and Expedited Admission process is presented by the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services and the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services. The training is approximately 15 minutes in length and is primarily intended for jail staff, defense counsel, and prosecuting attorneys. After completing the training, participants should know more about the purpose of the triage process, the triage user guides and forms, and should understand the eligibility criteria for early admission. Additionally, participants will learn how to make an effective triage request and how to get more information about the process. The Office of Forensic Mental Health Services oversees the admission process into DSHS-operated facilities for persons court-ordered into competency evaluation and restoration services. Presently, our inpatient facilities include Eastern State Hospital, Western State Hospital, and DSHS-operated competency restoration residential treatment facilities. The Triage Consultation and Expedited Admission Service is for True Blood class members who require rapid admission into inpatient psychiatric services because they are at risk of harm to themselves or others as a result of their high level of psychiatric symptoms. The triage program allows those persons most at risk to move up to the top of the admission lists at the DSHS inpatient facilities. There are presently two guides that describe the triage consultation and expedited admission process. One is for defense counsel and prosecutors, the other is for jail staff. Attorneys have a slightly different process for making referrals than jail staff, and the respective guides describe those different processes. Now let's take a look at the referral form. This is what the form looks like. It's 2 pages. You can fill it out electronically or you can complete it by hand. We encourage you to fill it out as thoroughly as possible by checking all of the applicable boxes and filling in all of the blanks that you can. Most importantly, articulate to the best of your ability what it is about the individual's condition, behavior, or presentation that is prompting you to make the referral. In the next slide, we'll discuss what makes a person eligible for expedited admission. The criteria for a defendant who is court-ordered into competency evaluation and/or restoration services to be considered for expedited admission are as follows: active suicidal intent, or actions such as suicide attempts or serious self-inflicted injury, and/or inability to meet basic needs that puts the individual's health at risk, such as not eating or drinking. The criteria are based on the rationale that people who meet these criteria are at particularly high risk of harm to themselves or others and require expedient admission into an inpatient psychiatric care setting. If you believe the defendant meets the above criteria, you can make a referral for expedited admission. We'll discuss where to find the referral form and the referral process in more detail later. As we move through the next few slides, we'll consider some scenarios. Remember, we're considering whether or not a defendant is at risk of harm to themselves or others as a result of their high level of psychiatric symptoms. Now let's take a look at some scenarios while we consider the criteria. In our first scenario, a 24-year-old male with recent onset of schizophrenia and severe depression was found attempting to hang himself in his jail cell with his bedsheet. The jail has addressed the immediate risk but believes this individual has ongoing urgent clinical treatment needs. What do you think the likelihood is for expedited admission in this scenario? Low, medium, or high? If you thought the likelihood of meeting criteria in this scenario was high, you are correct. This is a life-threatening situation because there was a recent suicide attempt and possible ongoing intent of self-harm. Now let's take a look at another scenario. In this scenario, a 30-year-old female with a history of mania has refused her mood-stabilizing medications about 50% of the time over the past 2 weeks. She is found pacing in her jail cell, and when engaged in conversation with jail staff, rambles about how she does not need mental health treatment and how she perceives the jail to be a dirty place. She is eating and sleeping and presents no safety issues. What do you think the likelihood is for expedited admission in this scenario? Low, medium, or high? That's right. The likelihood for expedited admission is low. There's no immediate danger to the person. In the next slide, we'll consider a third scenario. In this scenario, a 58-year-old male is anxious and aggressive, disinhibited, and although he speaks coherently, does not follow directions and rules of the institution at times, causing problems for himself with the jail staff, who have several times segregated him for infractions. He has difficulty relating to others and perseverates on questions to fellow inmates, leading to fights. He was in segregation 2 weeks ago, and while in segregation, he began to injure himself by scratching his arms and cheeks, but the scratches did not require medical intervention. He does have periods when he follows staff directions and institution rules, and is currently showing compliance with staff and rules, but he has been yelling at staff lately, making statements about how frustrated he is with being in jail. He is currently not doing anything to injure himself. What do you think the likelihood is for expedited admission in this scenario? Low, medium, or high? This one was a little trickier, but it's medium. The situation may be caused by brain injury or cognitive impairment and could lead to injury to self or others as a result of other inmate aggression or physically coercive staff intervention. This scenario is an example where very good documentation would be necessary. Documentation that accurately explains the individual's condition, behavior, and presentation, as well as any and all interventions and supports that have been attempted, and the results of those efforts. Good documentation will allow the evaluator to make an informed decision. In our final scenario, a 43-year-old female with schizophrenia with predominantly disorganized symptoms is found with her feces on her face and in her food as she is eating the meal. What do you think the likelihood is of expedited admission? Low, medium, or high? The likelihood for expedited admission is high because the situation could lead to a medical compromise. Hopefully those scenarios were helpful. Now let's discuss how to make a referral request. Making a referral request is a fairly simple process. First, you will need the appropriate form, which can be found at the web address listed on the slide. You can also find it by navigating to the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services website and selecting Triage. Collect all of the supporting information listed on the slide and fill out all requested fields on the referral form to the best of your ability. Email the completed form and all supporting documents to triageconsult@dshs.wa.gov. In the next slide, we'll discuss the request process for attorneys. Defense counsel and prosecuting attorneys can make a request for expedited admission by submitting an email to triageconsult@dshs.wa.gov. The email may be written in paragraph form and should fully articulate why the attorney believes the individual meets the criteria for expedited admission. The request should also include the individual's legal status. Now let's go over some tips that may help you make a successful expedited admission request. Remember, you are sending these requests to clinicians who will make a clinical evaluation of risk. It's very important that you articulate your concerns and support the concerns you describe with documentation. For instance, if you describe that the individual is not taking food because they believe the food is poisoned, the reviewers will wonder, Has the individual lost weight? If yes, how much and over what period of time? This specific type of information should be included in the request form if it is available. In scenarios where the individual may have refused medical or mental health assessment or treatment, please indicate the refusal and include dates and times that assessment or treatment were attempted and refused. Now let's discuss what happens next. The first step in the process after you submit your request is that a triage consultant will review the request for completeness within 24 hours, excluding weekends and holidays, and will advance the request to an Office of Forensic Mental Health Services licensed clinician. If more information is needed, the triage consultant will contact the person who made the referral. The clinician completes a review of the request and documents their recommendation as to the approval or not of the request for expedited admission. The triage consultant then advances the case to the chief medical officer at the state hospital, who is a licensed psychiatrist, for review and decision regarding expedited admission. Within 24 hours, the chief medical officer either approves or does not approve the request. The chief medical officer notifies the triage consultant of the decision. The consultant then notifies the person who made the referral. If approved, the state hospital admission staff will coordinate admission with the jail. With approved expedited admissions, the defendant is admitted as soon as a bed is available. If expedited admission is denied, the standard waitlist protocol is followed. It's not uncommon for the health or behavioral status of an individual to change over time. If this occurs after an expedited admission request has been denied, and you believe the individual may now meet criteria for expedited admission, please resubmit the request following the same procedures. This concludes our training on the triage consultation and expedited admission process. In order to request an expedited admission, please submit the required material to triageconsult@dshs.wa.gov. If you would like assistance or training on this process, please email jail technical assistance at dshs.wa.gov. On behalf of the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services and the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services, I would like to thank you for attending this training.